All right, let's string out this prison thread just a little longer, like across the border into Oregon, the 541. And after Tuesday night, the headlines read in Oregon, Measure 112 passes. Oregon votes yes to remove slavery language from the Constitution. And they did, only you might be shocked to know how many actually didn't want to. Measure 112 would change Article 1, Section 34 of the Constitution, which used to say there shall be neither slavery nor involuntary servitude in the state, otherwise than as a punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted. Meaning no slavery here unless you're a prisoner, and then you could be considered a slave since we're likely going to force you to work while in custody for, quote, slave wages. So now that part of the Constitution will say there shall be neither slavery nor involuntary servitude in this state, removing the second part of that sentence. And one would think a measure that proposed that passage in the Constitution, the thing on which we base our laws and freedoms, that sentence should just say there shall be no slavery or involuntary servitude in this state. End of sentence. Full stop. Right? One would think you might get 99% of the people to agree to that. I mean, they just did a similar thing in Alabama and in Tennessee, and at least 80% of those voters in those states thought it was a good idea. And those are former slave states. Oregon, meanwhile, only 55% of the voters thought it was a good idea, meaning 45% said, nope, let's keep it the way it is. 44.5%. So where did these no votes come from? Well, you might have some idea. How about Malheur County? 71% said, nope, keep the slavery for punishment part. Baker County, 72%. Grant County, 72%. Morrow County and Wheeler County, both of which just agreed to start talking about joining the state of Idaho, 73 and 75% respectively voted against it. Harney County, the biggest one, 76% said no. Just shy of 683,000 people across the state of Oregon said no. We want to keep slavery as some form of state-sanctioned punishment. Why? Well, short of cold calling someone who did vote no, there's some speculation as to why some people wanted to keep it. And those people work in law enforcement. Oregon State Sheriff's Association voiced their opposition to Measure 112, and they filed a statement with the Oregon Secretary of State's office saying, while the State Sheriff's Association does not condone or support slavery in any form, Measure 112 creates unintended consequences for Oregon jails that will result in the elimination of all reformative programs and increase costs to local jail operations, which is what they wanted to say. The sheriff of Wasco County, by the way, in which 57% of voters voted against the measure, Sheriff Lane Magill said in an op-ed, voting for the measure would directly affect most, if not all, of our work programs at NORCOR, which is Northern Oregon Corrections. Some of those work programs, he said, include cleaning the facility, like cleaning the jail, doing the laundry in the jail, picking up trash around the area. Jobs, he pointed out, which are not forced labor. They are voluntary, he says. However, per the state constitution, the Department of Corrections requires inmates to work. And they wrote it like this: whereas the people of the state of Oregon find and declare that inmates who are confined in corrections institutions should work as hard as the taxpayers who provide for their upkeep, well, all inmates of state corrections institutions shall be actively engaged full-time in work or on-the-job training. That's in their constitution. So what was that determining factor for 683,000 Oregonians that made them decide to say no? Whether or not they could still get inmates to work for less than $10 a month, was that it? It's enough to sway 45% of the population to not want to say no slavery in this state, period? Well, there are only 4,400 employees in Oregon's Department of Corrections, by the way, and the Department of Corrections operates 12 correctional facilities across the state, only 3 of which are in those counties we just mentioned on the eastern side of the state. It's also worth pointing out, this is the same state, and we've talked about this before. This is the same state that hasn't exactly had a clean record when it comes to race relations, dealing with those who have been historically enslaved. They are called exclusionary laws, and Oregon had 3 of them. In its territorial days, in 1844, there was a law passed that allowed slaveholders to keep their slaves, but only for 3 years. And after that, those slaves, the black people, had to leave the territory within 3 years. And if any stayed behind beyond those 3 years, well, they could be whipped. 39 lashes every 6 months until they did leave. 5 years later, another law barred black people from just coming into the territory. You got to stay out. Legislators believed it, quote, it would be highly dangerous to allow free Negroes and mulattoes to reside in the territory or to intermix with Indians, instilling feelings of hostility toward the white race, end quote. Then, when Oregon wrote its constitution in 1857, it included a clause banning free blacks and mulattoes from moving to Oregon. It also wouldn't allow them to own real estate or enter into any sort of contract. No slavery, sure, but also no non-whites allowed. These laws were not removed from the books until 1922, and Oregon was also one of the few states to refuse to ratify the 15th Amendment. You know, the one giving black men the right to vote in 1870? Oregon didn't ratify it until 1959. And the 14th Amendment, the one giving equal protection of the law to everyone born in the U.S., that was ratified in 1868. Oregon didn't jump on that train until 1973. So Oregon has a history of non-white discrimination. Does that explain why 45% of them voted against removing slavery language from the Constitution? But ultimately, they did, thanks to the other 55%.